The Thing About Jellyfish by Ali Benji. Chapter 22, Face to Face. At the beginning of each session, Dr. Legs asked me just one question. Would you prefer silence or speaking today? Each week I responded the same way. I pressed my lips together and stared at my feet. Dr. Legs leaned back in her chair, clasped her hands in her lap, and met my silence with her own. As my parents waited on the other side of the door, we sat wordless, week after week. Which made me think about a musician, Aaron. About a musician Aaron once told me about, a composer who wrote a piece with no notes whatsoever. When the piece is performed, a musician comes on stage, opens the piano, sets the timer, and plays nothing. Aaron said the first time the piece was performed, the audience got nervous. They whispered to one another and shifted in their seats, and some even walked out. Now when it's performed, people expect the silence. Instead of getting mad or nervous, they hear one thing: the rustling of programs, fabric sliding against seats, polite coughing. They hear themselves, which they wouldn't hear otherwise, even though those noises are always there. The piece is called 433, because the performer sits quietly for exactly 4 minutes and 33 seconds. If people were silent, they could hear the noise of their own lives better. If people were silent, it would make what they did say, whenever they chose to say it, more important. If people were silent, they could read one another's signals, the way underwater creatures flash lights at one another or turn their skin different colors. Humans are so bad at reading one another's signals. I knew this by now. Sometimes I tried to imagine what signals Dr. Legs was sending me, but I couldn't tell. I'd lived in the world of words for so long, I guessed that silence still wasn't a language I understood. Each week, after 45 minutes, Dr. Legs ended the silence by saying, "Okay, time's up." I sure hope my parents weren't spending a whole lot of money on these sessions. During my 4th session with Dr. Legs, something changed. About halfway through the appointment, Dr. Legs spoke. "Suzanne," she said, "I wonder if you have ever given much thought to why people speak to one another. Why speech came about in the first place." Dr. Legs explained that many people believe spoken communication evolved because human societies had become so complex that hand gestures and grunting were no longer enough. Then she added, "But that's not what I believe." If she thought I was going to ask what she believed, she was wrong. Dr. Legs leaned in toward me and said, "I think it developed from our need to be understood." Our need to be understood. Those words made me think of all the things I'd done wrong to Franny. Those words made me think of all the things I'd done wrong to make Franny understand. Everything that had happened leading up to the moment when I saw her walking away from me for the last time, crying and carrying those awful bags. It hurt too much to think about, so I pushed the memory out of my brain as quickly as I could, just like I always did. Instead, I thought about Jamie. Since my failed phone call, I'd been thinking hard about how to reach him. Being understood is a fundamental human need, Dr. Legs said. Wouldn't you like to be better understood? I sat very still. "Trust me," Dr. Legs had said in our first session. "I won't judge." But how could this woman of all people help anyone understand me? Isn't there something you desperately want to express? Well, yes, I needed Jamie's help, so I nodded. "Perhaps I can help you find the words," she said. Her voice was low and excited, as if she and I were partners in some great conspiracy. I could tell she thought we were experiencing the kind of thing she'd probably call a breakthrough. I narrowed my eyes to let her know this was no breakthrough. "Well," she said, "whatever you want to say, I recommend you say it right away. You come right out and say it. Just open your mouth and tell the world what's on your mind." Jamie, help me, I thought. Jamie, you are the one. "Of course, with your generation," she continued, "I always feel like I have to add this. Please don't do it through text or email or anything like that. When you need to communicate something important, speak your truth face to face." Face to face. Ha! The person I needed help from was literally on the other side of the world. "There's a reason I'm saying this, Suzanne," Dr. Legs said. Did you know that most of what we communicate to other people is nonverbal? Some of us try to communicate without words anyway, I thought. It doesn't always work. It sure didn't work for me. When you say what you have to say through a computer or a phone, there are often miscommunications. But when it's just you and someone else, and you're right in front of them, speaking your truth, they are much more likely to understand. Trust me, speaking my truth face to face. And I'll bet you understand, they'll respond. I imagine myself sitting across from Jamie. He was smiling at me, as if asking, "Can I help you?" I smiled back. Dr. Legg said, "I see you smiling. So that helps you, I hope?" I shrugged, which she apparently took to mean yes. "Wonderful," she said. She sat back, folding her arms across her belly. "Just wonderful." We sat in silence for the rest of the session. When Dr. Leggs opened the door, she smiled broadly at my parents. "I think we made major headway today," she said to them. They grinned back at her, all big hopes and open hearts.